There we go. Yeah, so once again, I met Marty and Sal only a few months ago, really, but it seems like much longer, just because of those common shared values that we do have. And as soon as they started to like explain to me and show me their vision and what they'd educate themselves on holistic management and land regeneration and permaculture, I was just fascinated by what they're doing out on their place. And ultimately, food security, I think, is going to be an issue of the future, no matter what world we live in. So we live in this abundant, like riverina area, yet we're surrounded by a lot of large monoculture cropping. And I think if everybody could just give a little bit more space to, veggie, fruit, nut production, we'd live as such a more substantial and substantial. I can get that word out. We'd live a much more sustainable life. So I'm going to hand it over to Marty and Sal tonight. They're going to run us through, a presentation on Into the Backwoods, and our intention was having a bit of time at the end for Q&A. But ultimately, I'm going to hand it over to you guys. I'm going to make you the host here, and excited to see. Oh, no sound for Cam. I'll give you a call, Cam. We'll get this started and then we'll see how we go. So, Marty and Sal, I go make you guys a host.
Okay. So we're good now.
It says Tegan Campbell has entered the waiting room for this meeting.
We just admit, do we?
Yeah, just admit if anyone comes on. Yeah.
Okay. So just bear with us because we're like a little bit.
We did this once today, but
with Chris, so we'll ease into it. Okay, can everyone see that?
Go to.
Is that not working?
Just start the slide.
Yeah.
So it does full screen.
I don't know how to. It's here, slideshow. Sorry, guys. Can they hear us?
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, sorry. Okay. So everyone can see that? Yep, sweet.
Yep.
So we're gonna, at the end, like Chris mentioned, if you got any questions, so throughout this, if you have any questions come up, just write them down and ask them when we're done at the end, and we'll be happy to answer.
So the Backwoods, we came up with that name because we're pretty backwards with what we sort of do compared to everyone. We also live in the backwoods, so it's pretty fitting. Our sort of idea is based on building food production systems whilst restoring ecosystems. I think it's bigger than that, but that kind of gives you a bit of an overview.
Yeah, and the way we look at producing things, the way it's been viewed by most other cultures is they go to an area, they have an idea of what they want to produce or what they want to do, and they manipulate their environment to produce what they want. And we're more about restoring that environment and integrating what we want into that environment. So it's also a bit backwards way of looking at that too.
So, welcome.
Working or not?
Welcome.
So Sally with some
That's the setting on that then.
year-old grass trees, so
yeah,
they're pretty cool.
They're pretty amazing. So we thought we'd do a bit of a overview of us, our history. I'll start. I grew up in what's this here? Okay, sorry, I just got another admission. I grew up in Hervey Bay in Queensland. We had a bit of land up there. I lived with Mum. My parents separated pretty early on, and Mum had her fair share of problems, and so did the rest of my family. So when I left home, I actually did a fair bit of study before I left home, a bit of hospitality, conservation, horticulture, those sorts of things. And I went to uni and I studied wildlife management and conservation. I spent a lot of my youth pretty well, like every other person, drinking, partying, doing all that kind of, or I guess in a way selfish things where I was only really concerned about myself and not thinking about my impact on everything else. When I left uni, I went and worked at a cattle feedlot, which is certainly an eye-opener. I actually didn't know what it was prior to that, and then learned a lot. So if anyone wants to know about feedlots and where grain-fed beef comes from, I can tell you all about it. And after that, I transferred down to Chamorro to work at the feedlot down there, and met Marty. And then we sort of, I don't know, went on a bit of a journey of sort of
On a journey.
Well, yeah, still on a journey. And we've been married for 4 years, and we have a little 2-year-old boy named Elijah. He's a crazy little kid. But yeah, that's, I guess, me in a nutshell. And here's Marty.
I chose this picture of this horse with the blinders on, pulling a wagon, because it was, it feels a lot like how I grew up, with blinders on, only seeing what's in front of me, not knowing what I was doing, and just running amok and just being young and dumb like most people. Most probably have done. My parents actually were on this journey of finding an alternate way of living when I was quite young. My first school I went to was actually a Steiner school in Bega. My parents were living down the coast at the time, but that didn't work out. We ended up in Chamorro, and I guess I've picked it up years later. But yeah, just not being happy with the way the world was going. It's just forced us to start to view things differently, take those blinders off, look around, wonder why you're just doing the same thing every day. And so
I guess from early on, we sort of realized that the social sort of structure is designed just to make us sick and unhealthy, and the whole perception of working being, you know, like a sign of your, I guess, social
worth.
Yeah, worth. And I actually wanted to comment on this from the talk the other day, how we were talking about, you know, when shit does hit the fan and not caring about anyone else. Or I think that's where we were at initially. We couldn't care less what happened. I mean, I know from my upbringing, I was taught to pretty much hate people. So it's taken me a long time to get out of that. But as we've sort of learnt more and more, we've realized that actually that's a pretty dangerous viewpoint to have, and then you have to work with other people. It's really important. We thought we'd go over a bit of what we've sort of learnt over the last few years, probably 3 years or so.
Nothing's happening.
I think, hang on, let's move this.
Well, there we go.
Is that
That's
working?
it.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I've started studying organic farming. This was through TAFE. It's actually, this course wasn't actually really about organic farming. Our teacher hated organics. And it's sort of a long thing to get into, but it opened our eyes up to a lot. He sort of delved into things like agroecology, a bit of like basically all these sorts of things. So that was quite good for us. And then Marty studied permaculture.
Permanent agriculture. So the idea of developing, designing food production systems that when you walk away from them, they just continue to produce. They are permanent, and they don't require our input.
And one of the keyline design, it was actually the inspiration for permaculture. Both of these principles, permaculture and keyline design, were created by Australians, which is pretty cool. I think to adapt to the degrading landscape that we kind of created. So they had to kind of come up with these concepts to move forward.
And keyline design is one of the main practices for rehydrating landscape and building soil with their subsoil. So it's a very important element to our design.
And ecology is a big one. We're all a part of ecology. So it's pretty interesting to learn about the dynamics of ecosystems and communities and how everything works together. I spent a lot of time on this at uni. So I initially had a pretty traditional idea about ecology, but have expanded upon that now. And natural area restoration is also another You could kind of class it to conventional farming. It's pretty similar in its traditional belief system, and it's not really willing to expand upon just leaving these areas alone. We've learned that that's not how to actually restore native areas the quickest way that you can.
Social ecology, study of social structures. We did this mostly just by our own investigating on looking at different speakers and watching YouTube and reading articles.
There's one, we just point out one person here, Stuart Hill.
Stuart Hill.
If anyone's interested in learning more about social ecology, he's really worth looking at some of his YouTube stuff. He's really good.
And holistic management. Holistic management offers a framework to bring all of these elements to a design together. It focuses on holism, so the sum of something is more than the sum of all of its parts, but it breaks your parts down, but still has that vision of what it is you're after at the end. So we found it quite useful.
Yeah, it was like the concept, as you can see, the book here was designed for agricultural systems, but it can be utilized for any area in life, even just basic, like your personal life. So it's very interesting stuff.
And throughout our research, we went to conferences and field days and things like that, and we found a common theme when we went to these meetings, and it was people were after a whole package of landscape restoration, and nobody could offer them the whole package. It was either some people were doing water, some people were doing trees, some people were doing pasture management, some people were doing livestock rotation, but nobody was putting the whole picture together. So that's what we focus on, is the whole of the ecosystem.
So I guess after what is going on here? I don't know why this isn't working. I was just saying something here.
Please move this window away from the shared application.
Maybe this. Oh, here we go. So as a result of all that research, we sort of developed our belief system, well, as it is currently. And one of this isn't everything. Obviously, there's a lot, but we kind of just sort of broke this down a little bit. So the first one is our environment is a reflection of ourselves, and that's pretty evident by the current circumstances in the world, where our environment is severely degraded and our communities are pretty much the same, and our food systems, and that's where it comes into you are what you eat. We can see the health of society and the increase in disease and mental health issues. It's all related to really how our environment's looking, and vice versa.
We are here for a reason. We believe we're here for a reason. We have a purpose. It's not just random. We have purpose, and it drives us to achieve what it is that we believe we're here for. We believe respect is mutual. So our environment being a reflection of ourselves, those who are around us, the way we act is reflected back upon us by the way we act to people. And so if we're not respectful to them, they're not respectful to us. So respect is mutual. We have to be respectful to people to expect their respect back.
Next one, everybody's doing the best that they can. That's something we've actually just been discussing recently. Martin asked me if I thought that people were doing the best that they can, and I was sort of reflecting on my own upbringing and like the hurt from my parents and family and whatnot, and I thought, well, I don't think they were. But then the more I thought about it, I realized, what they went through, how they grew up. You can't really say that anyone isn't doing the best that they can, because you don't understand the circumstances that they've been through. So I think it's really important to have that impression about people from the get-go, that everybody is doing the best that they can.
And nothing is impossible. And especially if we work together, anything is possible.
Yeah, we think there's sort of certain limits that we've been taught to think that we can't do everything, or but really I think that we're capable of anything. Okay, so this is our context. This is kind of a structure in the holistic management, what you learn about how to really define your life and
what we're working towards.
Yeah.
But also comes into your beliefs as well.
Yeah.
So I believe water is sacred. Everybody should consider water very important. Water is life. You can't grow anything without water. Everybody needs water. We are majority water. It's very important.
Yep, we value all life, and everybody should value all life. That's from other people, that's our environment, that's animals, plants, everything. Everything plays a role. Everything is doing something something important. And if you remove anything from that, everything else will be affected.
Diversity is key. So it doesn't matter what sort of system you're running in. If you don't have diversity, you open yourself up to collapse in one way or another, disease, pest. Diversity is key in business. It's the same as anything. Diversity is key.
We nourish our mind, body and spirit. So I think that's critical. You're not going to make any change to our planet if we ourselves aren't healthy, happy, and that is everything. That's being in the best sort of physical condition you can be, as healthy as you can be, best mental state, and it's a process that everyone needs to factor into their lives. I don't think people do, so that's a pretty important one.
And we value community. We are generous, we are open and honest, we are kind and loving, and we are patient. All these things are very important to us, and they are how we want to act and how we want our future environment to be. So we put it in our context so that we read it and it drives us. It drives us to be these people.
So our mission, in a nutshell, is to create heaven on earth.
So this came from going over and over about what it is that we wanted to do. We were going to create a happy, safe, healthy environment for people, and wanted people to be safe, healthy and happy. And ultimately, you can just word it easy as create heaven on earth. So,
restoring our connection to the land is something that's vital for everybody. Everybody should have a connection to the land. That's at the point of us being here. And what has happened by design, obviously, is that we have lost that connection to our land. So that has caused a lot of problems. So our goal is to restore our connection to the land and also to take control back of our lives.
Yeah, if we see our land as a resource that we can use, then we don't have a connection with it. But if we're connected, we're less likely to abuse it. And taking back control of our lives, we control very little of our day-to-day lives. We don't control where our food comes from. We don't control where our power comes from. These things are really important. So taking back control, being able to provide for ourselves is very important. And it is to create that safe, healthy and happy environment.
So I think to move away from the systems that we're talking about that are causing these problems, we have to work on this because they currently control most people's lives.
Yeah, and Sally's favorite quote?
The healing of the land and the purification of the human spirit is the same process.
So how do we get there? This breaks down into two parts. The first is landscape. So and it runs in a specific order. It's water, plants, a mineral cycle, animals, and then food. So water. Water retention is the first step in ecosystem restoration. It is very important. You cannot grow anything without water. So what we've done on our property is slow the water down, because it used to come just rushing through our place and off to the neighbour's place and never to be seen again. Spread it out and get it to sink into the ground where it become most beneficial. So this picture on the screen, that is the ridge in our front paddock. So we have spread the water out and it is overflowing on the ridge where it can work its way down and it irrigates from there. We get the most out of our water. It's working, doing the best that it can up there on the ridge because it's working its way down. It's going to last there a lot longer than it is down in the valley areas. And that is complete opposite to what has been done since people landed in this country. They've drained wetlands, they've run the water down to the valley areas and off the land. So
So we've had comments from our neighbours that before the works that we've done, that they would watch the water just rush off our place onto their place, and now after significant rainfall events, they don't see any water, which they kind of, you know, say that, or initially think it's a bad thing, but it actually means that the water is more like moving down slower onto their land, and it is also more purified.
And we used to get a big drenching of rain, and the water would run literally for a couple of hours and it would be gone. And we noticed the last rain event we had before the last big rain event we had, it was running out of the bottom of our paddock for over a week.
So it's quite significant results even in just doing that. And I think, did you mention the way it used to function?
Yeah, this is the way water used to function. It used to, it was through a process of succession, was forced up onto the ridge.
So the next is plants. Most ecosystems operate in healthy ecosystems operate in a 3-tiered ecosystem, which consists of a forest, a grassland, and a wetland. If you think of a forest, it has a canopy, 8 layers to the canopy, and if we were to think of this in a food production level,
people build what they call food forests.
Yeah.
So those 8 layers consist of a canopy, an understory, a bush layer, a root vegetable, a climber, a herbaceous layer, a ground cover, and a fungi layer.
Yeah, so also too, within these forest areas, this is where a lot of animals will spend a lot of time, because it's where they shelter, they rest. There's a lot of bird life and other animal life in this area, so there's a lot of mineral buildup because they're all pooing, weeing, and doing all that sort of stuff. So it is like, it's usually at the top, so then all that mineral and nutrient will then move down the landscape. So the grassland kind of acts as like a filtration system,
and it's like the high production area through the middle. So this is where things really grow, where animals go to feed. They take that feed, they take it back up to the top of the hill and turn it into minerals that can fuel below. So these systems, the wetland at the bottom is your final filter for your 3-tiered system, that it filters out, because it has your plants with your really fine roots in it, filters out your micronutrients so that the water running off your property should be clear, which is what we have now.
So our goal is to replicate this system, as you can see in that previous picture with the water. So you've got the top with the swale. This is like your wetland, and then your grassland. And, you can't really. We don't have vegetation at this point in time, but we plan to. So we do plan to plant out a large number of trees.
So just replicating that 3-tiered system over and over down the hill, using agroforestry methods to get the most production out of our landscape, and doing it the way the landscape wants it to happen. So the way a landscape or an ecosystem builds itself, it's called ecological succession. So if you bulldozed a forest and left it alone, it would go through a process of succession to return back to what it was originally. Soil determines what you can grow in an ecosystem. We have been told that it takes 1,000 years to grow an inch of topsoil. This has been proven wrong many times the last 20 or so years, 20 to 50 years, where people are growing 8 to 10 inches of topsoil in 12 months. And if you're combining many different methods, you can do even more, even faster.
So I think one of our, we sort of think we're going hard or we're going home. So we really want to make changes. So we're taking big steps to do that.
The mineral cycle is turning plants into fertilizer, or minerals that the plants can then use to grow faster again. Strengthen the weakest link just tells us that if we have a weak link in this chain of the mineral cycle, that we need to strengthen that link to speed up that process of cycling minerals. Very important. It is the fuel that the cycle of the fuel for your environment, for your ecosystem, is the mineral cycle. It is critical to growing anything.
So next is animals. I think there's been a common belief that traditionally, or now, that animals are detrimental to an ecosystem, but that's a pretty crazy belief because animals have always been here. So what we want to replicate is the predator-prey movement, which we did have at one time in Australia. It would have been the dingo and kangaroos, whatnot. So the way in which you can do that is through, well, how we are replicating that at this point in time is rotational grazing, which is where the animals are sort of
bunched up and
bunched
moving
up.
around. So the way that they did this in their own environment was herd animals or prey animals would come together in a tight group, and to avoid predators, if one wandered off to the side, it would get picked off by the predators. So they'd sit together in a tight group and they would move around to the next lot of feed, staying together in that tight group, not returning to where they fed for...
Because they need to wait for their poos and wees to sort of disappear, because most prey animals won't feed upon an area that has been soiled. So they won't come back to that area until it's safe to, it's right to eat from again. Yeah. Then with free range animals, like our animals will still be moved around. It's not like they're going to be confined. But when you allow animals to be free range within a larger area, they selectively graze. So they will pick their favorite food and they will eat all of it until it's gone. And that usually the plant suffers and dies. And then they will pick their next favorite, and then that species will disappear. So
it reduces diversity.
Yeah. So you see a lot of loss of species.
The advertising marketing of free range produce, it's something quite sought after, but it's actually very detrimental to our environment. So we have a rule, it's fill a vacant position. So if we have a plant, a vacant position in a forest or grassland area, we need to find that plant that fills that role. And if we have an animal, or we do not have an animal, if we have a vacant position in our animals for a specific animal, then we need to get that animal in there. And if we can't get that animal, we have to play that role. So at the moment, and I'd say for a while, we have to play the role of that predator, because we don't have a predator that can move our livestock around.
And we're pretty limited with our prey as well. We have 4 horses, so we're doing our best with them, but it's better than nothing.
Food. So the food we eat comes from the plants and the animals that eat them. And healthy people need healthy food from healthy soils. So when we understand how easily we can build soil, how fast we can build soil using different methods, we can grow whatever it is that we want. And when you're looking at, what are they called? Microclimates. We can create microclimates within our landscape to suit plants that wouldn't naturally grow in our area.
So we had food last. I think people always think of food first, but you have to understand that we don't have the food if we don't have all those other things. So it's important to think of those other things first. Oh, it's gone weird again. There we go. So next is self.
So I wasn't sure whether to put this before doing the water or at the end. It can go both ways. If you're not willing to change and work on yourself, then working through the restoring of an ecosystem can be very difficult, because you'd have a set way in which you want to do something, but you have to be open, you have to be willing to change. So this could go first and last.
Yeah, so it's important for land restoration, community building, everything. You need to build your foundation on solid ground. Yeah. So it's just a basic overview. Obviously, we need clean water, healthy food, exercise, meditation, relaxation, and self-care. I think we always forget to relax. We must relax. It's so important.
Yeah. And that hawk, I took that photo of that hawk trying to grab our chickens who were not relaxed. So the second part after the landscape is the community needs. They involve community building and activities, education, accommodation, tools and equipment, and money or funds, finances. So the first is community building. So as part of our design, we look at what does the community want to do, or what can we do what activities can we do within our environment that we can integrate into our environment that the community would want to do?
So some of these activities would be things like canoeing, horse riding, wildlife watching. If we're to acquire more land, we want to expand upon this and do things like agility courses and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's the kind of things that we're thinking, but that's open to suggestion. Obviously social gatherings, which is just,
we're social beings.
yeah, it's important.
We like to gather.
Yeah, I think it's important to gather over food too. It's this is how we build our communities, and also by offering support networks. I think, as we all know, as why we have this group, is that during tough times, it's important to have support networks. And if we can establish support networks where we're on the same page, we all have the same values, that's even better.
Yeah, so this is something we had trouble with from the start, because not being a part of a healthy community before, it was difficult to see what it was going to look like. So we still have a little bit of trouble with it.
We're not terribly good socializers, but we are working on that.
Yeah. But I think that part of that is because we're not including the other people in it. So it should be a community decision what it is that the community wants to do, not just two people.
Yeah.
Education.
So our one of our main plans is to use our property as a model, so for sustainable food production, something that's replicatable, so that we could basically go onto any landscape, any farm, and work with farmers to restore their environment initially, and then if they were willing to expand upon that into further into community building, that we could do that as well. So basically it requires us to sort of document everything that we're doing so that people understand costing, all that kind of thing.
Being that education is the key to change, or the secret to change, or knowledge is, we started, I'm trying to write a children's book based around our design, but I am horrible at writing anything, so it's moving very slowly. But we're looking at developing an overall model for what it is that we are doing. So for the whole landscape design.
We were talking about this, like I haven't actually really delved too deeply into Steiner education. So I think that he may have a lot of similar values to us. So that could be something that is worthwhile looking into.
Yeah, but I think I mentioned it earlier, how we went to the conferences and nobody was doing the whole design. And I've done the holistic management. Sally's going to do the Tarwin Park training, Peter Andrews.
Natural sequence farming.
And these people charge thousands of dollars for a couple of days course, and they don't offer the whole holistic design that we're looking at integrating our business into, or our into our landscape.
Yeah, so the other thing, we've conducted a few tours on our property, which have been pretty fun. Everyone's gets pretty keen about that. And we also want to do classes and courses. So we're really interested in like self-sufficient sort of courses, like leather making,
woodwork, clay,
preserving
pottery,
food, all that kind of stuff. And
just things you'd expect to see in a landscape from a couple of 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Things you might find useful.
The other thing too about education is that it's not just us educating others, it's others educating us as well. So we want to learn from others. We don't know everything. So we really want to be able to tap into that as well.
Yeah. And that knowledge being the secret to change. A lot of people who are scared, wondering what it is that could happen next. If you had the skills, if you had the knowledge to survive in any environment, if anything were to happen, a lot of that stress that is on you would be removed. So if you can control a population's information, you can control their ability to change, and providing them information you can open up doorways for them to change. So that's what we want to do, is provide people with the basic knowledge they need to feel comfortable if something were to happen. Common sense, really.
So the next thing that we want to do is develop some eco accommodation. We want to do builds that will shelter the body and comfort the soul. So it has to be something that is comfortable, but we think simplicity is really important, because when things get too complex, then really you're living in something that's causing you stress, I guess.
Yeah.
So they have to be efficient, as in like climate friendly. So we were considering straw bale dome, which we talked about the other day.
We haven't really found anybody else doing anything similar to what we want to build. So we're just going to build some trial ones and see how they go.
So yeah, so we do plan to utilize these as like tourism, but there's also opportunity to use them for other purposes as well.
So tools and equipment. This just has us in our design thinking about what we have at our disposal. And as I say to everybody, we will never be as resource rich as we are at this very point in time. We have pretty much anything we want at our disposal. Machinery for land shaping, animals, plants, and building materials. Now is the best point to be preparing for anything, to be building anything.
I think too, a lot of times people will say about developing something like this that, oh, well, how can you use fuel and how can you use these other resources? But we have to be realistic about this and understand that we're at a tipping point. If we don't do this quickly and use the resources that we have, then we won't be ready. We won't be able to restore our environment. So we have to use it. And we're willing to.
Yeah, we are looking at a very simplistic way of living in the future, but that doesn't mean that we have to make our own tools and dig our own contour banks and to get there. We, as part of our context and our values, we have to be smart or wise with the tools that we have and consider all tools at our disposal. So it's very important to remain open-minded and to what is possible. Money or finances. So we've looked at a couple of different ways of funding what it is that we're doing. Up until now, it's pretty much been go to work, save money, spend it on what we're doing, go back to work, save money, spend it on what we're doing. And it hasn't really been working. Well, it has, but it's been quite slow. So we've looked into a bit of funding opportunities. The government offers a bit of funding for what we are doing. We were meant to have Destination New South Wales out a couple of weeks ago to pitch our idea to them. They're pretty interested in something like what we have planned for our area. So that could come with funding.
Because the problem that we have is that we don't necessarily trust the government. So taking money from them is always a problem. But we also think of it that if we can use these funds for good and create the change that we need to, whilst, pandering to them, well, I guess at this point in time, it's something that we need to do.
We are considering anyway.
Yeah, unless there's another option.
So economy and trade, and there is also for, I don't know, how an economy within a community would look like.
I don't like to call it economy because the economy is what's driving everything that's happening at the moment in the world. So it's hard to call it an economy, but trade is probably better term for it.
So we were looking at setting up something like a social enterprise that would effectively own our property and our business, and something that could crowdfund or take donations so that we were able to not only do what it is that we want to do on our property, but be able to provide services for others who are looking to do something similar. So we could come onto their land and pay for the implementation of what they require to have something similar to what we're designing. And it's as someone mentioned the other night, there are people in cities, stuck in city, who would love to have the option of doing something or somewhere to go if something big happened. And some sort of framework for an enterprise to be able to own the land or purchase land to be able to grow and build is something we're looking at anyway.
I think it offers certain securities too. So if, our ultimate goal is to purchase as much land as we can to protect that land. So the social enterprise would essentially protect that land, and we could guarantee that it always was cared for in the way that it needed to be. So the enterprise, well, I think the enterprise is the same as a foundation, but you have to establish a constitution too, so that everyone knows what your values are, what your beliefs are, and if they want to join or become a member, that they have to, I guess, respect those values. So it's sort of a, I guess, a bit of an open book.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we were thinking at the moment, but I'm sure other people may.
As we mentioned at the start, ultimately what we are setting up is a model. So there's got to be other people out there, other communities that are thinking of doing something outside of what they're currently doing in their day-to-day lives. And people would be interested in seeing what a model would look like, and having outsiders fund it to see what it would look like, I think would be reasonable to consider that is a possibility. Next we have benefits of what it is that we are doing.
I think this is pretty brief what we've come up with here. There's many benefits. The first, in restoring a landscape, we have, as we said, improved water retention, which is going to increase drought resiliency, water security.
The cleanliness of water. When you get the water down into your soil, it's filtered as it moves down the landscape through your soil. So it's not full of nutrient, full of dirt, soil running on top of the ground. It's filtered as it moves through, and it comes out clear. It's the water the way you should have it. And
increased topsoil. So the loss of topsoil is very significant within the whole world at the moment. Australia is pretty bad for it. So this system of land restoration can significantly increase topsoil, which is very important.
Yeah, it will increase biodiversity.
So biodiversity losses are also quite significant. So we really need to be working on that. As we sort of mentioned before, when you lose a species, it has a trickle-on effect on everything else. So we don't actually really know what's happening right now with biodiversity loss and what kind of far-reaching impact it's going to have. So by having more trees, more habitat, we're going to increase biodiversity.
And Australia leads the world in biodiversity loss.
Which is crazy.
So we're doing a pretty good job at it.
Yeah. Employment opportunities for the local community. We think this design will definitely create jobs for people, and we ultimately want to keep it to the local community.
Boost the local economy, because that's what we need.
Yeah.
Educate others on the potentials, and improve health and well-being, because the current state of society's health and well-being is quite poor.
Not only from our food, but also by offering people an escape from the shit system that we currently live in, and nature is really where everyone needs to get back to. Yeah.
So questions. One thing I have to say is, the main question is, what if you get it wrong? So we assume that we are wrong in our design. And what if we got it wrong and we thought that what we needed to do was bulldoze everything and just leave it alone and wait? And that is currently the view for native areas, is to just leave them because they've been altered, and we have altered them, but it's not our responsibility to restore them. And the current way of looking at agricultural land is, well, it's starting to change with regenerative agriculture, but they're nowhere near what they should be doing.
I think I always have trouble with this belief that, don't intervene, don't step in and assist nature. Well, you know what? they're in that position because of us. So we have to step in and we have to help them. So we're going to do that.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, I'll just pass this back over to Chris. How do I get the thing? Come on.
You got to escape out of that and then go. How did we change the host?
Was it new share? No. Oh no, you got to click on his video. That was on his.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, guys. We're just trying to hand this back over to Chris. Okay.
Mike.
There we go. How's that?
Perfect. Yeah, we're back now, guys. So I see. I think it was Kim. I think Loken is in bed now, so I don't think it was Loken. But Kim, did you just want to unmute yourself? And for anyone else, if you just want to write in the comment, like you don't even have to write the question, but if you've got a question, I don't know, put something in the comment box, and we'll just go through it that way.
Oh, I just with that photo that you had, and it had all the lines to slow the water down.
Oh, yep. Hang on a second.
Are they lines of like shrubs, or is that just lines?
That's rip lines. So like
So this paddock, when this work was done, there was not a blade of grass on our property. So all these lines were rip lines to get the water to go down into the soil.
So Martin went through with a ripper blade, and it sort of separates the soil, which opens it up. So if you think about it, as the water's moving through that ecosystem, every time it hits rip line, the water has to soak in before it can then move on to the next rip line. So it's soaking in at every single point along that landscape. So it's quite an efficient way of retaining water.
Yep.
So they look this color because as we've disturbed the soil, we've also disturbed a lot of different vegetation. So it's starting to come up in the rip lines. And we've also done mounding as well.
I'm not in that picture.
They're not in that picture, you can't see it. So the mounding is for our trees that we're planting. And it's supposed to increase the efficiency of tree plantings. So that's what that is.
And then I guess there's two other things. So the first one is obviously we're in lockdown, but at some point moving forward, I'd be really interested to, understand how we can support you, or how, we can all get out there and give you a hand. And selfishly, I've got an area out the back, and we're really confused about what we should be doing with it. And like, can we get you to come out and, support, employ you to kind of help us even just at a house level with, the different, we got sort of like this mini paddock out the back that we don't know what to do with.
Well, that is part of what we were thinking about was consultancy. Like, we're happy to help anybody who has any questions to do with their gardens, anything, or what you want to do with your land. For sure, we can do that. But when it comes to helping out, like really anything that people are willing to assist with, we've just ordered 130 fruit trees, and we plan to plant 170 of them. So we greatly appreciate some help with that, and that's something that's going to benefit everybody too, because once these trees start to produce, then that's going to be produce. And we also have 7,000 native trees that we're having delivered for the Swift Parrot project. So there's little things like that, like and even just anyone who wants to come out and go for a bushwalk, or do anything like that, really just come and enjoy it. So
that's awesome, guys. Thanks, Kim. What do we got here? Chris, you had a question. Do you want to unmute yourself, mate, and just ask it?
Probably a bit easier. It was a bit of a two-part question. So I just wanted to see if you guys noticed any negative or positive effects of the way neighbouring properties run their farms and their habits involved. And the second part of it was, if you were to expand or start to create this somewhere else, like what sort of environment or properties would you avoid? So like I assume you don't want to be doing this in the middle of where BFB have large farming areas, because they're going to be spraying chemicals and all that sort of stuff. So
Oh no, we plan on commandeering BFB land.
The goal is to grow and consume the land. We believe that the land doesn't belong to us; we belong to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what they are doing, it benefits a small group of people. If the rest of our community knew what we could have and what they are doing to prevent that from happening, the rest of the community would be behind us. But you can do windbreaks, you can do shelter belts, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what landscape you're after.
Yep.
We're out in the ironbark, so this is some of the harshest land and soil type in our area, and we did a tour last year, and like just after we'd done the works, and we had farmers show up who were shocked at the way in which, or the things that we had growing and the way that they were growing. But the positive effects we've seen on our neighbour's place who are selling soon, he actually started to try and implement what we were doing on his property because he could see the benefits of it. So he started ripping, and I explained to him that he was doing it incorrectly, but he didn't listen. And later on, he came back and took levels and did it correctly, and it worked even better. But yeah, being able to see that benefit and see someone who called us crazy to start with go and then implement it because they could see the benefits of it was good to see.
We also have another neighbour who is very he's one of the top farmers in Temora. And he was always like, oh, whatever, like, we don't think it's going to work. And he's like, oh, well, once we can see like 6 foot high grass growing on your property, then we'll consider making changes. But he's already actually he's starting to implement a few things like just chopping crop and letting it lay and come up itself.
Starting to listen to what it is that we're trying to assist them with, because ultimately we're trying to help them to restore and regenerate their land. We don't want to have to create a business out of it and buy it off them. It'd be much easier if they just restored it themselves. So helping our neighbours is big on what we stand for. As for the looking for land, there's nowhere we wouldn't consider. We were considering buying the next place down the coast because it's a good place to go to escape the heat. But if anybody's interested in knowing what our landscape used to be like and how it used to function, there's a very good book you can read called Biggest Estate on Earth by
Bill Gamage.
And it's one of the most comprehensive, it's written on explorers' diaries and notes. So he had a look at these records and wrote this book based on the records, and it's very interesting to see the landscape we used to have. And if you understand succession and the way in which our landscape has been eroded, you can see the potential of what we could have and the way it used to look. It's very interesting.
Good.
Perfect. Yeah. No, that explained it all. That was great. So
cool. Very good.
Yeah, I just like you guys. I know. I think you mentioned early on, Sal, is that you asked the question: are people doing the best they can? And I tend to have that big belief that the farmers in the community are doing the best they can based on the education they've had and their belief, the structures they've grown up around. And yeah, it's fascinating because I think we all do, and it is easy to look at others, isn't it, and just go, oh, well, you know what, you could be doing it so much better. But when people are so fear driven by money, I think it's hard for people to see outside of that paradigm, I guess.
They've put a lot of time and resources into what they're doing. It's very hard to admit that what they're doing may not be the best they from that standpoint that they could be doing. So for sure. And they've been fed this, they're actually being put into a position where it's very hard for them to get out with their, synthetic fertilizer, financially, they just can't see a way out. So yeah, it's quite sad, really. So we ultimately, we want to help those people and let them, like, make them realize that there are cost-effective ways out.
Yeah, I believe that once the growers held the most power in a community, like the farmers would have been at the top. They produced the food that the rest of the community required to survive. And I think now what has happened is the farmers have been beaten right down to the bottom. They have to understand the power that they have and the potential that they're sitting on. And if they do, they will take their power back.
Yeah.
Awesome. And it's our responsibility to educate them in what they could do.
Yeah. I do have actually another question, guys. Like, have you considered sort of having memberships, food membership type things for your place where, you know, either in exchange for money or time or, you know, investing in growing where, you know, people like ourselves could, you know, be part of your harvest type thing?
Oh yeah, for sure. We initially were looking at the community supported agriculture. Yeah, I guess it's basically you pay a yearly membership and that sort of covers costs and whatnot, doesn't leave the farmer struggling. But yeah, definitely, that's part of the social enterprise too. I think it enables us to have membership, and I guess as part of that membership too, that we could do things like the educational stuff, the newsletters and that kind of thing as well. So we also want to do things like harvest your own, you know, like where you get to actually come out and learn where your food's coming from and do that kind of thing. So yeah, membership is definitely something, but just the way, like, yeah, just trying to work out the way in which we do it. So that's something where
just the community supported agriculture, they do offer frameworks for the rules around which how the group operates, but ultimately it's up to the people who are involved. We are sovereign beings. We can interact with each other however we like. We can come up, we can have this conversation. We can sit down, have a conversation about what do you want? What can we offer? Do you want to pay anything for it? Do we want to take anything for it? We have the right to sit there and have that conversation. It doesn't have to be, I read a legal book that said that I had to pay you this amount and you have to take my money. When we were setting up what we were doing, we didn't want a cent for it. We kept telling people, we're going to do this and we're going to do it for nothing. And they said, you can't do it for nothing because nobody will take you serious. You need to create a business out of it. You need to create a lot of money out of it. And that is how you change people's minds. So yeah, we are fully open to the growing other people's food. That is what we want to do. Membership, it can be whatever whoever wants to be involved can be, as long as it's open to everybody who's interested. Everybody has a say, and everybody knows what everybody else is getting out of it.
Awesome. That's great. Just checking the chat here. Oh, Beck, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, sorry. I think, Sally, you said in there, you were talking about free range animals and things like that. And you said that free range isn't probably the best option. What would be the next option if you're buying? Yeah.
So yeah, rotational grazing is the next, with the resources that like we currently have. As we said, ultimately you would have that working naturally where your predator would be moving your animals around, but we don't have a top apex predator anymore. So if we are replicating that system by you'd sort of use fencing, electric fencing, you'd have them in an area for a certain amount of time.
Planned rotational grazing or planned grazing. So it's just mimicking that natural system. If you have 10 paddocks and you require 120 days rest before your animals can come back to that grass that they've fed on, then you need to work out how many paddocks you have, how many days feed you have in each one of those paddocks, and that's how you rotate your livestock. You can't put them into the next one until they've eaten it all down, put it into the next one until they've eaten them all down. If you require 120 days rest and your paddocks are too big for them and they selectively feed, you need to break your paddocks up into smaller paddocks. So you have smaller paddocks, more movements, less overgrazing, because when a plant regrows and is chewed off too early, it's overgrazed. It doesn't have a chance to seed. It doesn't have a chance to grow naturally. It'll start to grow laterally rather than up. And that's where you start to lose your diversity. When your plants can't reproduce, they'll get sick of trying to grow up and chewed off, and they'll disappear.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all
You're
right.
good.
What animals are you guys planning on putting on your property?
Starting with cattle and getting some more horses, because horses are quite beneficial. And cattle have does anybody know where the only place in the world that is humid year round is? Anybody know? No, it's inside the stomach of a ruminant. So in summer, when our landscape is dry, the dry grass that's left over, it can't decompose, it can't break down, so it oxidizes. The carbon that's in it is released and it goes up into the atmosphere. But to turn it into soil, to get it to decompose, it has to go through the stomach of an animal. And the best animal to do it is cows. If you have cows and you're moving them around in a tight group and you're just moving them short distances, you buy a box of dung beetles online and you put them on the ground, and they get that poo and they bury it down in the ground. It's like going around with a shovel, picking up the cow turds and burying them in the ground. And dung beetles can't fly very well. They're made for walking. So the problem that people have when they're moving their animals long distance is the dung beetles can't find where the next lot of dung is. But when you are moving them only a small distance, all the dung beetles have to do is move along. And cows are one of the best at restoring ecosystems faster, because they can get that nutrient out, they can cycle it, and they can get it to the ground and in the ground quicker than most other animals.
And they have great poo too, because it breaks down really easy. It's not like horse poo or sheep poo that's quite sort of, tight and compacted, so it will break down very quickly.
Yeah, but we're not limiting ourselves by animals. We're looking at an animal. We have to have an animal that eats every plant that we have to be able to cycle those minerals completely and as efficiently as possible. So we're not limiting ourselves to any types of animals. It's just if they fit in our system and they can play a role that we require, then we include them, as long as they're managed correctly.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Lauren, I think you had a question. Did you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, sorry guys. This might sound like a bit of a dumb question, but I'm going to ask them anyway. What sort of, how much land do you think is optimum to start to do something like this? Like, how much land do you think you need to start something like that, or you can do it wherever?
Well, I think there's been really very small blocks who are very productive. Permaculture's big on that. People who are growing 500 kilos worth of food in a quarter of an acre. So it's really just about utilization of space and
And when you're going for that forest system, when you're in your food production, you have a tree that is surrounded by berry bushes and it has everything else growing in amongst it. And that's how plants want to grow. And you can do that in tight spaces. You do it in backyards in town. You can grow a lot of food. It doesn't have to be your carrots growing over here, your lettuces growing over here, your tomatoes growing over there. Everything can grow in amongst each other, and they will benefit from growing in together. And so no piece of land is too small.
And none too large.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. That's cool. So by using your layer system, like you were talking about before, you can sort of really utilize every bit of space. Is that what you mean?
Optimize your space.
Yeah. So say for example, in a very small suburban block, you may have dwarf species, and you may utilize your fences and sort of beds along that and that kind of thing. Yeah, just not limiting yourself in that
awesome.
respect.
Yeah.
That's really good. That's so inspiring, guys. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just ask on that too? Like, with the model that you're setting up, how much land do you have there, and how much produce do you reckon you could have, and how long you could feed people for?
Well, we have 350 acres.
Yep.
We did a bit of an overview on like say, for example, the fruit and nut species that we wish to utilize. It's really hard. I'd say that you could.
I don't know, you feed a lot of people, and when you're looking at perennial plants, and including your annuals as well, but you're looking at developing your soil so that your annuals can reproduce each year, you're producing food in every season. So throughout the year, you are constantly picking food. You have early, mid, and late season varieties of most fruit trees. You have annuals that produce through winter, summer, autumn, and spring. You can have food production year round off our size land. I don't know, you can feed hundreds of people. And like there's a guy, Mark Shepard in the US, has 106 acres or something, and that is massively, if you want to see the potential for production, he focuses mostly on
chestnuts and hazelnuts.
But he produces a lot of food out of what he does.
Yeah. So you have to remember too, like, say a fruit tree might produce 20 kilos worth of fruit per season. So we had a nectarine this year, which is only a few years old. And it probably, I would say that it would have produced maybe 200 nectarines. And that's just one tree. That's one tiny tree that's not even that old, that we did nothing with.
Yeah, so if you're looking at agroforestry model of planting them every 5 meters, you can like that is an incredible number of trees alone you can have. And for each tree, you have half a dozen shrubs, you have a dozen herbaceous plants, you have root vegetables everywhere, you have all these other plants growing in amongst them. It's just a real tight, complex cluster of plants that just is just looking at one single component of it. You could still produce a lot, like fruit trees alone, but with that tree comes a lot of other plants that are also producing.
It's really hard for us to give you like an exact figure, because I don't think there's anywhere that's actually doing it, and there's no data there, and because we actually haven't implemented it. But like, it is going to be significant. Like,
it'll feed more than us anyway.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, no, that answers it. I just, it's not. This is much bigger scale than I sort of expected, and that. Yeah, so it's not just a few planter boxes, is it? It's
no.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So,
the other thing too is we plan to utilize our native areas. So within these areas, because they're probably one of the hardest areas to grow, we also incorporate native edibles as well. So there's that too. So these are the areas that people consider to be non-productive, but they are actually productive.
Yeah. And there's the animals are really the byproduct of your design. So the livestock that you have, along with the animals that live in the water, the fish and the yabbies and whatever else you have, there's also that element as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, guys.
No worries.
All good. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think Lauren just asked here if you guys think you might go into selling organic plants and trees.
So like the plants themselves and the trees. I'm interested in that. I think if we were to do, say, consultancy and to help others rehabilitate their land, there's actually a high demand for trees and plants at the moment. Like, there's not enough out there. So I think that it could be beneficial to do that. Like, we would need help with that. Like, we would need more hands on though, because it's quite a big job. But yeah, ultimately that would be the plan, to sort of further.
Yeah, well, it's I don't know, it is furthering our what it is that we want to do is to get people to grow food themselves. So offering them the plant that they require to grow the food is something that, yeah, definitely.
So we, I think it was last year, I actually propagated a heap of stuff, like just from seed that I got from the shops, like from an apple. I took the seeds and I planted it, and I had probably, I'd say about a 70% success rate with that seed, and propagated probably about 250 trees. So they're not obviously true to type, like, which is just I think that's just a sad excuse for not utilizing that seed. So yeah, and these trees are pretty amazing.
Yeah,
so it's pretty fun.
If you really do want trees to grow produce from, the best thing you can do is to get seed and grow it, because when a plant produces seed, they say you have to plant 1,000 seeds from an apple tree to get a tree that will produce an apple that is exactly the same as its parent, because plants diversify. They don't want, if a plant is producing a seed exactly the same as itself and its environment changes, it will die out. It has to produce offspring that can live in wetter or drier or hotter or colder climates. So when you're getting seed from plants that you get from fruit that you get from the shop, they may be more drought tolerant. They may be more water tolerant. They may be more frost tolerant. They may be more tolerant to heat. You don't know, but it's the diversity we're after. Seed is very important. We should be getting every seed that comes through the supermarket in town. It should be going in the ground, because we could get climate ready avocados suited to this area. We don't know. It's the potential of the diversity from the seed that we really should be utilizing.
Yeah, I think too there's a belief that these seeds, they won't actually produce fruit, but all you have to do is drive to Wagga and look at the trees on the side of the road that are producing fruit. The reason those fruit trees are there is because somebody threw out an apple core, or someone threw out their stone fruit, like they're just doing it themselves. So it's...
Yeah, the fruit that we're currently getting from the shop, they select those trees because the fruit is the right size and has the right attributes for them to be able to sell it. So if they're producing an apple that's this big, that's not very beneficial to them, because they can't pack enough in a box to ship them off to wherever they're shipping them to. We don't know what we could get from the seed that we put in.
Yeah, to answer your question, Lauren, yes, we do want to propagate trees.
Now, Cam had a question. I'll add one to it as well. Cam was just asking about, what are the next steps, guys, for people getting involved? And then I'll add to that, what do you guys need from the community? Like, what can we help you guys with right now to help further this vision?
We'll go with what do we need right now? Well, what do we need right now? If we are looking at producing food soon or fast, the number one thing that will help us achieve that is food scraps. If we can build soil very quick. If we can get food scraps, there's a lot of wastage in town. That is a very valuable resource that we could be utilizing to produce more than enough food for our group, more than enough food for friends and family. We've been spending the last couple of years on building soil in an area we have fenced off, that we're planting these 170 fruit trees in, and we're looking at, this is a food forest system that we're doing over the rest of the property. So we can plant whatever fruit and vegetable you like in this area. We want to grow whatever we can in there. The thing that will help us achieve that quickly is food scraps.
I think also too, collection of seed. So instead of throwing out your apple core and throwing your seed as well, you could collect your seed, really from anything. I mean, I cut up a pumpkin and I'm always collecting my pumpkin seed. Yeah, that's pretty important too, because that's going to add diversity.
Yeah. So the other question, how do people
know what's next.
what's next,
Or how can people get involved? Yeah.
how can people get
Yeah.
involved? So as we move through what it is that we wanted to achieve, we're looking at different paths on how we would get there. And currently we were looking at setting up this as a business that we can run, an eco-tourism food production business. So there's the option to get involved that way, or we're also looking at just crowdfunding to have it as, I don't know, a group project. How people can get involved, what they want to do to get involved, that's just simply a discussion. What do you want out of it? How do you want to be involved in it? We are not limited to how we want people to be involved. We don't really have, evident from our undecided direction, that we don't have a set path on how we get to where we're going. It is dependent on community. What we're doing is food, shelter, and friends. The food and shelter are just as important as the friends. We can't have any two without the third one. So it's up to the community. How do you guys, if you want to be involved, how do you want to be involved?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I think like from just ourselves, what we were thinking of doing next was establishing some accommodation, so that it was something like that we could show people, that they could get a picture in their head of what we had planned there. The other thing was to really just get into this food production, because it's at this point in time, as we've all seen, food security is pretty important. So that's something we need to be working on now. And what was the other thing? And yeah, just the community building. So I think if we could all sit down and talk. Okay, we can't do that. Well, we are now, but we're doing it in a different way. I think, brainstorming. We want people's opinions, ideas, knowledge, everything like that. It is many hands make light work. So that's kind of where we're at.
So yeah, at the moment we're just, I guess, waiting to hear how people want to be involved if they do. What do you want from it, and what are you willing to put into it?
Yeah.
And so, guys, would you recommend people, like obviously you've got your Facebook page, Into the Backwoods. What would be the best way for people to start, I guess, contacting you guys if they want more info or want to, learn more?
Or they can call us, they can text us, they can email us, they can message on Facebook, whatever, any means.
Zoom works, whatever.
Yeah.
Message, we can come around, have a chat. We can come out here and have a chat, whatever.
We can accidentally meet somewhere. So
Lauren just asked about working bees, and I think, Lauren, I'll let these guys answer, but we've been talking about it a lot, is that what ways can we, as Kim mentioned the other day, work within the current system that's going on to to get out there and do working bees and stuff like that? Because I know a very real consideration is not wanting to put Marty and Sally in a position, or any of us in a position, where we get ourselves in trouble. But at the same time, I think connecting with the land, fresh sun and fresh air is like the best medicine. So I know we've definitely been trying to figure out a way that we can get working bees sort of set up here.
Well, is food production an essential?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that. I can ask Craig Sinclair might be interested to weigh in on that for you a little bit. I don't know whether you.
We
know Craig. Yeah,
and whether or not he resonates or not, but he told me about you guys way before I met you. He was a big advocate from council side of things. But also, it's essential. So how we structure that, and again, I've got connection to a lawyer. I can have a chat to her and see how that could work in terms of planting.
We are a registered business, so we could simply employ you.
Yeah, true.
I think maybe, and particularly if these lockdowns extend weeks and weeks and weeks, you'd obviously want to try and get some of this stuff done as soon as possible, to maximize the season.
Yeah.
So that's something we probably need to look at, because it's unlikely that they'll lift lockdown until term 4.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this, as you say, this is the time that we need to get seed in the ground and trees in the ground. So it is definitely ideal.
However we need to make it happen.
Yeah.
Just gotta.
How would it work, guys, if people were to volunteer as an essential worker?
Well, I think that's, I don't know the legalities of it, but a volunteer is
Yeah.
just a worker essentially. But so that could be an option, for sure.
Surely volunteers should still be able to work.
Yeah, I don't think they're limited, are they? Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Yeah. Well, it might be something for the solicitor, Kim.
Yeah, I'll send her out a message tomorrow.
Cool. Sounds good. Awesome. Good. Cool.
Excellent, guys. Well, if there are any other questions, jump in right now. Otherwise, I think, what's Jade got here? Oh, that's a good idea. Childhood centers for scraps. I know, didn't you say before, Sal, you'd looked at sort of a scrap pickup, or it was something that...
We've sort of dabbled in scrap collection a bit.
Friends and family scrap collection, but we were really looking at having it as part of our business, or seeing if somebody else wanted to start a business out of it, because there are models. I think it's WA, a lady started, and she charges people like $15 a week to go around and collect their food scraps. So I don't know whether you would charge people or have to pay them with produce or something, but you're effectively literally taking their scraps. But yeah, scrap collection is something we have been talking about for a while. Very important. We just haven't taken the steps to do it. So open to suggestions on the best way to do that. We were just going to put an ad in the paper and mention on Facebook anybody in town who's interested in us coming around and collecting their scraps each week.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, what comes to mind would be, instead of you guys like picking up scraps, it probably would be easier if you guys actually had like a drop-off spot on your property where you could bulk, somehow like get it all together and then pick it all up, or use like some sort of, I don't know, machine to help you move it.
Yeah, we thought about using
to where you need to move it, right?
Yeah, so using those 1,000-litre drums, just cutting the top out of it, taking it to town either on a trailer or the ute, and just chucking people's scraps in that. Because I don't know how many people we'd get who would drive 10 k's out of town to drop off a bucket of scraps. But
we have just on that, we have access to about 2.5 acres in town, and then we've got our own bobcat and about a 5-ton truck.
Yeah,
right.
So that's if it could be dumped on a block for a period of a time, like a week or two, and then transported out there. That's something we could definitely look at.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. That could work.
Yeah, if you're not going to utilise the scrap on that land in town.
No, that won't. Nah, it'll be residential.
Fair enough.
No, that'd be good. I think having that one drop-off point would make it a lot easier. For sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. We'll have to talk more about that.
Yep. No worries.
I think the other thing too, from basically what we've spoken about over the last couple of weeks, is that there's generation of new opportunities right across the board. Like we've got teachers who might be looking for new opportunities. You could really drive your education forward. There's opportunities for potential ecotourism with, things like Chris and I do. There's multiple things that I think potentially lend itself to creating our own little systems and our own little businesses. And, these types of conversations excite me because it's like, wow, like look at all the opportunities within that for a wider group.
Yeah.
And if it's, the bigger it gets, the more opportunities and the more employment opportunities there would become. So, there's, I think, massive conversations to have in this space.
We've had these.
I'd really just we actually forgot to mention that one of the areas we were looking at was like a wellness retreat. So yeah, alternative health therapies, yoga, meditation, all that kind of stuff.
We've had this conversation with many people multiple times, but we are retards when it comes to business. There's a block there that we just can't move past it. So we've actually been talking to Chris and Amber about assisting us with the whole structure of moving forward in a business, because we are landscape people. I think we are really enjoy being out there in our landscape doing physical things, but it's the business side of it that I just cannot get my head around. So it's need to have those conversations and work out, how do we move forward? How do we get there? If we want to do it as a business, if other people are interested, how do we move forward and what does it look like?
Well, and that's it. And you don't want to be working on the business if your skill is working the land. So, you know, that's where bringing a collective together is a really sensible idea, because there's lots of different, you know, skill set within the space. So yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah, I definitely think, like, well, I don't know everybody on the call, but I think with everyone's sort of skill sets, there'd be something for everybody, really. Yeah, so we can definitely work on that.
I'd say, like, it would be super beneficial for people who are interested to just, you know, maybe go and spend an afternoon with Marty and Sal and introduce yourself, you know, what maybe your subject matter expertise is, and what you potentially could, you know, offer as far as, like, your talents, your gifts, like what you're willing to, volunteer and like share the love.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Ultimately, like, I'd love to have everyone out here, you know, have a big meal and just talk about it all, but no, that's a great idea for sure. Yeah, just let us know when you just want to come out. We'll work on it.
I mean, one by one should be okay.
Yeah,
I think you can discreetly make that happen.
Yeah. I think it would be all good.
We can make it.
No, I'll just congregate all at the same time. Like, you know, convoy out there together with walkie-talkies and a couple guns and
potentially utilize a truck and chuck everyone in the back and
Awesome, guys. Well, I guess on behalf of everyone, I just want to thank you guys for putting this together, you know, and, you know, as I said, it has been super inspiring for us. I know for Amber and myself, we felt extremely lucky that Cam introduced us to you guys, because, we didn't have any concept that there might be people who thought very similar to ourselves in Temora. And to see what you guys are doing out there has been pretty incredible, and to see everyone on this call has been incredible once again. Like, you know what, I just think it's there are a lot of people here that are willing to make change, and it's exciting that you guys have been making such a head start on it for all of us, you know. I think what I can do, I'm just trying to think the best way to if you want Marty and Sal's number, just reach out to myself or Kim. And then, that's probably better than just throwing it up on Facebook or whatever. Not everyone's probably in that group either. And guys, I've recorded this tonight and it'll go onto a Dropbox link. So if anybody wants to download it for future reference, or, you know, if there's someone that you know that like this would really just be there, you know, exactly what they're looking for as well. You know, I know Kim said it the other day, but we are looking to slowly grow a group, but with people that we trust and believe have similar values or that are really ready for change, you know. So anything you want to add, Kim, before we wrap up tonight?
No, I'm just pumped. I think that roller coaster is real. There's a few different conversations going on within this group with me. Then I just reached out to Nui today and said, walk and talk. And he was like, yep. So keep reaching out to each other. I think we're all here to sort of pick up and help at any point in time. And yeah, I think tonight is great because it's inspiration, it's thinking, it's thinking outside the square. And I think that's actually extremely beneficial for our brains right now, is to actually get into that creative, get into that sense of possibility, get into the hope space. So thank you so much for just, obviously being on that journey for a really long time, but, maybe just finding your tribe as well. So I think we're all like super excited to learn more and figure out how we can support the growth of your project exponentially.
Well, thank you to everyone as well. As you said before, like before we met, Chris and Amber and Claire and Campbell, we sort of felt pretty isolated that there wasn't anyone else like us. So to know that there's even more of us is really exciting, and we're really like ecstatic to share our vision. And I'm super keen that you guys are all interested. I was a little bit like, oh, what if they think we're just weirdos or something?
I would totally think that still.
You are, but we are all too. I think that's the thing. We're all figuring out that, it's a safe place for everybody.
Yeah,
It's good
that's
to be
it.
different.
So it's been great. Thank you for allowing us to have the space to do it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be a weirdo if that's what it takes. Thank you.
Excellent, guys. Oh, sorry.
If anybody has any questions, thinks of any questions in the future from our conversation or
if also too, if there's any resources that you want us to share, like kind of what we've learned and stuff, we can also provide that too.
I think going forward, like we'll have shared questions around spaces, and once we can get together as a big group, I think running some workshops for us would be a really fabulous idea. And just sort of keep sharing that and building our education and our ideas about how we can even utilize our own spaces, but obviously creating spaces out with you.
Yep, cool. Sounds good.
And thanks for the reminder. I'll be saving my seeds.
Oh yeah. Come on, Anne.
Save your seeds, all of them.
Sorry, I've been wasting my apple seeds.
We go on the compost. So excellent, guys. Well, I wish everyone an amazing start to your week as well. And just know that, as Kim said, we're all here. So reach out if anybody needs to chat. And we'll be sending out another link for Thursday night. And I want to ask for volunteers as well, coming up maybe for next Sunday, if people have stuff they want to share, areas of expertise. I know, I'm interested to learn more about the unschooling models or other alternative school models if people have done research on that. So, please keep in touch with Kim and myself. And, look forward to seeing you all on Thursday.
Will do. See you then.
See ya.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, everyone.